Here we go.
Truly, the only way to get through this time period is through love, is through the heart of love and true compassion for humanity, through the earth, to understanding the connection to the elements and recognizing the importance of how the stars are not only in the sky, but are in fact within you. Now, when we take a look at the Pluto return, what's so interesting about it is that it is returning humanity to love. Why is that? Well, for starters, because Pluto again is the underworld. It's the unconscious realms. It's that which has been hidden, buried, and covered up that is now being brought back into light, back into awareness, thus creating a greater awareness for the whole of humanity. But if you look at Pluto, there's a stamp on it of a heart. Now, what's interesting about this is that, yes, it looks like a heart, but it's not a complete heart. And so what Pluto is asking is complete this heart, is return back to your own individual hearts to connect with the entire collective heart so that Pluto can return you back to love.
And when we speak about Pluto, we're not just speaking of it at a level of something external to you. It's that part of your own mind, it's that part of your own being that has that unconscious nature to sometimes suppress. But Pluto is that transformer that brings up everything that has been suppressed, everything that has been hidden. Because what we associate Pluto with is that deliverer. Because he sits on the edge of the Kuiper belt, and beyond the Kuiper belt, there's all these higher dimensional planets that have a very long orbit. And the orbit, when they were in close proximity with our solar system, wasn't until the last golden age, which was around anywhere from 12 to 24,000 years ago. And so that cycle of time for these planets to take these long cycles, what happens is that when they come into close proximity, there's a broadcast. And that broadcast then is awakened in the collective mind, the collective heart, the collective fields. And so these energies that these archetypal planets represent are in fact aspects of your own archetypal nature. And Pluto, in order to access that higher dimensional perspective, that higher ascended version of yourself, your divine nature, you have to go through the deep unconscious. You have to purify that. And so for these last 2 years, humanity has been given ample opportunity to go within, to really unmask the fears, unmask the traumas, unmask the dramas, the stories that people cling to in order to give themselves an identity. And Pluto represents that Platonic energy, that powerful energy is representing the dissolution of the I, the individual, the one is in divides, individual in divides, removing that division and embracing the unity. Sometimes it takes a very courageous soul to do that. And so for anyone that's really been at the forefront of going deeper inside themselves to awaken to a greater truth, an eternal truth, what we feel it's so essential that by doing that work, when spring comes along and there's this new alchemical cycle, it's not like you have to jump or leap into spring or spring forward by effort. You are gracefully held into that because this new cycle is basically bringing forth this new opportunity to embrace life through the eyes of gratitude, the heart of appreciation. And that's really the same message that has been spoken of for so long, continuously. But what tends to happen is humans forget about and take for granted the very blessings that we have to even have human contact, to even have the privileges that we have in life, just to even go to the store and go get fresh produce and be able to have all the luxuries that we have to this day. There's so many things that are forgotten. And we really feel it's so essential that this time, as we're moving into this new cycle, to really reflect on the last 2 years, reflect on your whole life if you must.
Yeah.
And just look for the aspects that sometimes you take for granted. And a really beautiful practice is that every morning and every night is just reflecting on the miracle of life, the gift of life. And we're great advocates for that always, just to remind you really what's important. You know, the world will play its song and dance, and it will go into different chaotic spirals that are, chaos is just finding new order. That's all it is. Anytime there's chaos, you find the center, the heart of it, the eye of it, to be the change that then can permeate that. And the more that come to that central golden pillar, that eye of stillness, the more that the awakened collective do that, the more that we can all transmute for the ones that have forgotten how to, and transmute and transcend the limitations that humanity perceptually may be facing, but truly isn't.
As always, what you're sharing, I don't want to watch over and over, because it's a transmission that I take in. But I also want to bring in a very practical question. So, of course, we all know it comes back to love, and what you just said about, okay, find the center.
Yes.
So how do we, on the human level, do that? Either when we have personal drama going on in our life, or someone we deeply love and care about that we have empathy and compassion for, or when we are so shocked and in compassion for what's happening on a global scale. And of course, the war in Europe, who would have thought would hear those words in contemporary times, war in Europe, has also shaken a lot of people. It's a big deal for a lot of people. So how do we find that coming back into ourself while remaining compassionate and demonstrating care and compassion, whether it's local or global?
What we can say is that some of the greatest heroism starts within. You look at the world and you see war, and you look at the world and you see conflict, or whether you look at the world and see all of the wonder that's taking place, all of the goodness that is actually happening, that is offsetting what you're speaking about. And we say to you, where is the war within you? Where is the conflict that is within you, that is dominating your perception of what you're experiencing in the world?
Yeah, because any time that there's a collective event at mass scale, such as what is occurring, it's a deep reflection of the collective unconscious, and it's bringing up that very reflection of, yes, the war within. And what is that war? It's the war of duality. It's every time that you judge someone, every time that you project onto someone, every time that you judge yourself, or you're in division with aspects within yourself, that division, that individual, that individes, that's the war we're speaking about, that polarity. Your role as a soul that's taken a temporary body as an incarnation vehicle is to come into harmony with those polarities and to come into complete harmony with life. Now, how do you do it? It takes wisdom. It takes wisdom, it takes courage, and it takes consistency. You know, when you feel triggered because of the drama or the trauma of life, and there's someone or something outside that gives you permission to then exert that feeling inside you onto the stage of the world, whether it be war, or whether it be a family member or a friend or someone outside of you perceptually. That feeling, if it's inside you, it's a part of you. It's a part of your conditioning. Now, what's important is to stop before you respond. Just take a moment, take a pause, take a breath, and because you are more powerful than your conditioning. You are not your conditioning, but it is your responsibility to transcend your conditioning. But then as soon as you respond, because your biochemistries and the cortisol and the stress hormones are expressing through your nervous system or your endocrine system, and your body's going into this tense or intensity or pressure. Alchemy is taking that, sitting with it, honing that, neutralizing that, and then transforming it into a higher upregulated chemistry or feeling state. And then you go beyond chemistry and you go into pure electricity, pure electromagnetic potency. And that's what spring is about. It's about moving into this next cycle, this new cycle of life, where everything starts beginning to blossom, starts beginning to reveal its inner beauty. A beautiful practice for everyone that's listening to this is to reveal your inner beauty. And how do you do that? You have to go to your shadows, because that's the fertilizer. That's the fertilizer. That's the stuff that you don't want to touch, don't want to see. And everyone tries to avoid that until you realize that it won't stop happening until you confront it. You know, whether there's something so simple like, you know, judging someone or something for whatever the action may be, something like that, you can flip that and have greater compassion. Send a blessing.
Imagine what they must have been through in their life in order to action something like that, to have such little value for life that they themselves have such little value for their own life, deeply, deeply within them.
Yeah.
For one can only truly see themselves. In the world, all you can truly see is yourself, whether you see, and without identification, without identifying, because identity, the identity is what we call identity. It is the density that you will immediately fall into. I am this, I am that. That is the particle instead of the wave. What is the wave? The wave is the all that is. It is the infinite. The I as the infinite is vastly different than the I as the identity or the identity. So detaching from that is a practice all in its own self, and not detaching in a way that creates splits in your psyche, but detaching in a way where you can witness something and have such great compassion for its play, for the multiplicity of the expression of Mother, Father, God, and all of its creation in spirit. Can you allow yourself to be that brave and that courageous? Can you allow yourself to bring about your love and let that be greater than your fear? There is such courage in that, far more courage than picking up swords or picking up arms. There is no courage in that.
And for the ones that are listening to this, of course, metaphorically, picking up arms is reacting. That reactivity, you know, that reaction to something. And all of that is resistance to what is. It comes down to one simple thing. It's being resistant to what is. Now, the world in itself, the matrixical field of this world, the collective field, is breaking to bits. It must. It must. A very foundation, a very blueprint. That is what is happening. It's going through a reset. But as it does that, in order to transcend that and transform that energy, that destructive, corrosive energy, we must come together. We must, especially during this time, because this is what's known as a harmony time, and we'll go into that in a moment. Especially during this time, we must come together in greater unity, because the only reason there is war is because there's division, there's separation, and it's asking for unity. That is what is on the polarity of war. So when there is any division in a country, in a state, in a person, in a community, anytime there is a projection of division, there will be a destruction to that, because the template of this universe only knows unity. It only is unity. It's only unified. There is only this one unconditional, unique expression of consciousness throughout the multiplicity. the human mind sees division through the filter of the division of the human mind's instrument, because it has that polarity. But it only has polarity when it's not connected to the heart. You see, the mind, well, not the minds, but the function of the mind, which comes through the brain, that is in division, the left and right hemisphere. Its purpose is to actually be an antenna for the heart. But the only way to do that is to connect through the pineal gland, and the pineal gland and the heart. There's a beautiful synergistic connection, because every single thing that manifests in your physical body comes from the heart. All the chakras come out of the heart. All the chakras in the endocrine system are central to the heart. All the organs, the first organ that was manifested is the heart. So everything must return to the heart, because the heart is the central pillar of all life in the human experience. And in the universal experience, all comes from that heart of love, that heart of God. And so all must return to that. So anytime there is this division, that is one taking the illusion so serious that they are now deluded, and through that delusion, they are now picking up arms or picking up swords or projecting and being the victim, and all those shadow tendencies, because they haven't alchemized that, they haven't cultivated greater light to harmonize those polarities. All that's playing out will then have to be destructive, because that's the first level of the human experience. Literally is the shadow. It's that tamastic shadow tendency. That needs to be transcended into the higher optimistic, positive expression, which is then becomes a projection of the joy that's inside you, to then share that projection with life around you.
That's right. Now, how can, when humanity, when 99% of humanity is divided within themselves, has splits of consciousness, of awareness, and yet this world is made up of that, how can the outside world externally not show that and reflect that back? It is in fact multiplied over and over and over and over again. We say to you, the real work is the internal work. Because then what happens is that when humanity becomes whole internally, inside, masculine and feminine becoming one beautiful expression of the divine, then what do you think is going to multiply in the world? Then what do you think your reflection is going to show you in the world? Then you'll start to see leaders all over the world reflecting that wholeness, that intent, that goodness that is deeply missing inside, again, 99% of humankind. And I mean this in saying, where in your lives do you not find 100% goodness inside of you? Is it in your thoughts? Is it in your projections? Is it in your critiques of others? Is it when you look in your own mirror and want to change something about yourself? It can be the most minuscule thing that needs to be returned back to love. Because this compounded amongst the billions turns into war.
Yeah, and not to mention, the land itself has the very imprint of the past experiences, and many don't know how to cleanse those lands. So they go to certain places and they can't help but think certain thoughts, because the very matrix of the energetic field or the morphogenic field of those lands have that imprint in them. So there needs to be greater harmony and greater purification for ones to actually go and purify those collective thoughts in certain regions of the world.
And it's created that way, because when there's a trauma that occurs anywhere in the world, then there's a broadcast signal of that trauma. And those people that also have a similar trauma within them start to gravitate to that area.
But the shortcut out of all of this is the axis mundi of love. Love is the axis mundi, that central column that the whole universe spirals around. and within. The one consciousness is a benevolent, loving consciousness that has no opposites. There is no opposites to love.
Not
You know,
true, no.
but the beliefs in some people's mind is that there's the opposite to love is fear. It's not true. You know, love, where there is love, there is only love. Where there is fear is the ignorance or ignoring that love.
An ignoring of God.
And an ignoring of God, of truth. That true unconditional love, which is unconditional truth, that eternal truth. Now, how do you get there? How do you get there, not just momentarily, how do you stay there? Stop identifying with the thoughts. You're not your thoughts. That is so crucial, because as soon as your thought comes in, then there's emotion that follows a few seconds later. And then all of a sudden you're convinced. You're convinced again. Oh, okay, here we go again. No, I'm feeling this way. This is you. I'm going to project onto you. I'm going to blame this. Stop that. Come inside, unmask those polarities, discover what is inside you all along, which is the omnipresence of love, which is as simple as just being a witness. Be the witness. And whatever you have the power to change in your life, then change it.
Right. This does not absolve anyone of responsibility of their own thoughts. That feels very necessary to share. This is not a scapegoating of, oh, I can behave like this and or I can think this thought because I'm not my thoughts. You are not just your thoughts. I'm going to put a caveat, because it's not that the true nature of you, of course, is not your thoughts that you're thinking. But through your personage, your thoughts do create your actions. And thus it is important to take responsibility, witness a thought and go, okay. Is that the true me? Is that truly what I wish to transmit into the world? No. Wonderful. Here's your opportunity. The pause that beloved Sanandaji spoke about earlier is just that. It's not, again, to be absorbed of your thoughts or your actions. In fact, it is the polar opposite. It is where you take even greater conviction and responsibility and full ownership for that as your thought. But
just highlighting the very simple process of when there's love, though, there's no thoughts to be found. You know, when you're really in love, when you're not falling in love with an object or a subject of someone or something, but when you're abiding, absorbing in love, that true essence of the self, when you're in that stillness of truth, you're in the stillness of the entirety of the world. So you become the eye of the storm, so to speak, the eye of chaos. And why is there chaos? Because that chaos is trying to find a new order. So it has to go through a destructive phase. But what's it going to return to? Its center. What is its center? Love. So you come back to your center and you're already the change. You've already been the change that destruction that you're seeing is going to transmute itself into eventually.
Of course. And that's the long-term game, right? That's what people will eventually move into. Everyone will return back to the light. There is nothing that won't return back to the light. Life seeks light on this planet.
And the light that's in unborn light.
And the unborn light.
Because we're not trying to play the polarity again of light versus dark, good versus bad, all of this. No, we're talking about the unborn light of consciousness, the light of spirit that again has no polarities.
Has no polarities. It is not truly light or dark. If one can really understand that.
Your mind will never understand that. But
because we're so in the duality, our mind is trained for duality, so that's where we can't comprehend it.
Yes, but that's the whole point, because the whole spiritual journey is to transcend the minds. When you're beyond the mind, you become witness, and the witness, the experience, and the totality of your true self. But in order to live in alignment to that divine human nature, you must purify the mind. So the mind becomes this blank canvas that expresses the divinity of spirit through its life. And then that mind is then a broadcast beacon for the light of the heart that then transmits that. And so that's the antidote for all of this chaos But if we were to see the polarity of chaos, the word and the etymology of chaos, we find cosmos.
Cosmos.
So the cosmos is the divine order, is everything in perfect synergy, which is always there. And the chaos is returning to that order, because chaos is only perceptual. It's the only thing it is, it's perceptual. Now, of course, this does not negate compassion. Compassion is why the last 2 years had to happen. Really, the lesson out of all this is compassion. And to move forward with that compassion, that is the grace that spring is all about, to spring forth in that compassionate heart, that compassionate light, to be that change and express that change with love, but not a love that is not able to speak truth or be discerning or be very centered. A love that is multifaceted, multifactorial in any given moment.
And this is where Pluto is the deliverer. And this is why I return back to, at the heart of Pluto is not yet completed. It is nearly complete, and it is asking the deliverance of love of humankind through this process to create the fullness of the heart again.
And we're talking about the imagery. If you look at certain imagery of Pluto, the celestial body has a specific scarring on the surface of Pluto that actually shapes a heart. But it's, again, it's not, it's like a three quarter. And so that extra aspect is what delivers you to the higher truth, which is that unmasking, uncovering, and purifying process.
Unmasking, what an interesting, again, analogy. The unmasking, and I love what everything you're saying is so beautiful and so clear. This is a really clear transmission that we all must watch over and over to really take it in. And I love the whole thing that Pluto wants us to complete the heart. That is so beautiful. So you've done an amazing job just now of telling us what we have to do on the inner level, how to manage our thoughts, how to really keep coming back to compassion. On a physical level, I have learned so much from you about the body and detoxification and purification. Can you share with us, as we come into this spring season, your thoughts and ideas about physical purification?
Yes, absolutely. Physical purification would start with at the cellular level and as it manifests out biologically. But as we're moving into spring as well, it's really essential to start cleansing the temple. You're cleaning out the temple, essentially. And the best way to do this, there's many reasons to do this. What we find is the best way is to have a lifestyle of detoxification, like daily detoxification. So you're not needing to, okay, we're moving seasons, now I have to cleanse, or now I have to do this. And then it becomes these extreme, very, sometimes tough for many to stay focused during that time to do. But in order to do that, you must make those simple adjustments. A very simple way to change your life in purifying the temple is eliminating things that don't serve you and keeping a food journal. So what that means is that if you've got all this noise inside you and you're eating whatever you want for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there's no way to really be in tune with your physical body, then you need to start eliminating the high processed food. So anything that's not a whole food. What is a whole food? A whole food is an organic produce that is not processed. It has the whole matrix of it. It's not a synthetic, it's not isolated. Certain vitamins or certain compounds, there's a certain isolation of something specific, whether it be a specific vitamin, a specific amino acids, a specific protein, or a specific probiotic, whatever strand that is. When there's an isolation, it doesn't have the totality of what nature needs.
Which means it will never have the totality of the benefit that you're looking for.
So what is a totality? It's the spectrum, because everything has in its matrixical nature, it has a spectrum of electromagnetic energy, that each part of that matrix supports that spectrum for your cells to be recharged by that spectrum of energy. Because whatever you eat, your body just digests it and breaks it down into millions and millions and billions of pieces, and then allows it to actually be absorbed. But really, something very simple as either polysaccharides or monosaccharides. Poly means many. So polysaccharides are those high complex sugars that are like carbohydrates that are really hard for the body to actually process. And they can really clog up the body. Monosaccharides, which are just single fruits. So if you were to just start doing a juice cleanse, like a cold pressed juice cleanse, that gives you all that phytonutrients, that nutrition delivers it directly into your cells. So you're receiving the full spectrum of something so easily digestible within your body. Now, if your body doesn't digest sugar too well, that's because spleen, pancreas, gallbladder, liver, kidneys, adrenals are not working efficiently. So in order to allow the body to regroup, cleansing is necessary. So you slow down the productions of the body breaking down all these complex food into simple food. So that can be done with a water fast, that can be done with a juice fast, or it can be done with like a smoothie fast. And if you can't do that yet because it's too much for you, start with an elimination diet, removing things like high produced foods or highly concentrated sweeteners, or things that are preventing your body to really heal itself.
Let's talk for a moment. Beloveds out there wondering, oh, I eat pretty healthy, I don't feel maybe that I need to cleanse, and I feel good, I have a lot of energy. That may be true. But most beloveds live in the city. Most beloveds, and even those who live in farmland, the air is not as pure as one might think it is. So you are always being exposed to toxins, EMF, towers, cellular, all of this that this world lives and breathes with, essentially.
Yeah. If you have a phone,
a computer, a laptop, most people sleep with it right next to their beds.
Get that away from you.
Right? So why? But before we go into a little bit about what we just talked about, why? And this is the why. And why would one want to do a yearly or a detox protocol every 6 months? And basically that just means that everything you've accumulated through that time period, you're going to detox what, in a week? No, it doesn't quite work like that. But a daily detox, we've recently become really passionate about a daily detox because, for a long time, our teachings have not really been about this, just what we've done with our lives. But now what we're doing is we're bringing more into the world our ways
how we live
of
our
life and how we live our life.
Yeah. And when you look at the toxicity of the environments, don't get attached to it. The body is incredibly durable. It really is, but you have to give it a chance to do so, to rebuild itself, to renew itself, to rejuvenate itself. You have to give it what it needs, not only physically, but also emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But here's the thing. If you've got a toxic body, or you haven't detoxed heavy metals from your body and your organs aren't functioning, your emotional state is always going to take a dive. You're always going to be in the traumas and the dramas of life because your body hasn't created resilience to actually be really in your pillar. So when we talk about everything that we have in the last half an hour about being loved, being in your center, finding that stillness, being in the awareness, someone listening to that would be like, yeah, that's all well and good for you or for some, but how do you do that when you have this problem, that problem? What we find is when you detox and cleanse, you are more resilient. Your frequency is so alkaline. Your frequency is at such a high perspective and a frequency of such a high vibration that you're just not interested. You're just like, I'm just not going to play that game. Like,
yes, and beloved, that's such a beautiful point, and it's important to share from here, is that your toxic emotions are acidic.
mm-hmm.
So if we were to classify them as either alkaline or acidic, we could very clearly say and easily say that negative emotions, negative thought patterns, negative behaviors are acidic, where your positive thoughts, your high vibrations, your beautiful actions that you take in the world are much more alkaline. What that means is that if you are one who's doing the deep work and the deep excavation, beautiful, and bless you for that. But if you're also not doing the physical work, then all of that which is still acidic inside of you is still holding on to the energy that you are trying so hard to release. And this is why a daily detox protocol is very important.
Yeah. And we will, what we've shared with our Miracle Mentorships group is that when you understand detoxification, it can become very simple. There's no such thing as disease. There really isn't. There's symptoms of the body, and that's a big one for people to digest. But if you understand that there is dis-ease, but disease, that is a fabrication of taking the leaves and going, oh, well, the leaves are discolored, the leaves are brown, but not looking into the roots. And when you isolate something in life and you don't see it from its holistic perspective of emotional, mental, spiritual, and physiological, you're only looking at one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens in the physical body, there's only really two things, inflammation and acidosis, and they're actually just one thing. So when you've got a buildup of acidosis, you're down on the pH scale. And that then thoughts are going to be attracted that are more acidic. Actions are going to be more acidic. Those tendencies are going to be more acidic, which is more corrosive, which is more destructive. But when you start coming up to the spectrum, becoming more alkaline, not too alkaline, but perfect balance, that perfect seven, that having the perfect balance between alkalinity and acidity.
We're talking about your pH at this moment.
When you pH the body, or you bring the balance of pH within the body, you generally have harmony in your thoughts. You have harmony in your organ language, in the way that your body responds.
Mm-hmm.
And then that can dissolve and transform and alchemize that acidosis or that inflammation, because the body will give you symptoms. But what it's saying to you, it's speaking to you, it's communicating to you what its needs are. You're just not listening. And when you listen to it, and you live in alignment and you go through all the food conditioning. A lot of people eat for comfort and eat for, eat for that instant pleasure or emotional, to help emotionally.
Emotional eating is a misidentification with hunger. Does not mean that you are in fact hungry or in need of nourishment other than emotional nourishment.
So what we say is give your body a break. Give your body a pause, give your body a breath. Start maybe taking away the things that aren't good for you. Start having more of a simple diet for at least a week, 2 weeks. What we'll be introducing in the near future,
this is just a peek,
is a platform of whole supreme foods that will give you a whole nutritional, support to not only remove what's the toxicity of heavy metals, but take that out of your body, and any pollutants that are inside the body, remove that, but then actually start revitalizing the body. So you have this powerful energy and available energy to really do anything that you feel in your heart necessary, but also to rejuvenate the body, to actually rebuild, renew the body. So we'll be releasing this soon and we'll share more about that.
Sacred Six. We, beloved Scott, as you already know, we have spent the greater part of 2 decades walking barefoot on the lands all over this world, doing healings on the earth, the grids, the ley lines, the sky, all sorts of important things in order to harmonize this world and thus eventually harmonize humanity. And through this process, as we have blessed the earth has now blessed us. And what has been revealed to us, we are now bringing forth for humanity. And so we're so close. We're just weeks away from the very first small batch of these sacred six.
Yeah, well, everything that we do it very consciously, small batch. We only use the highest, ingredients possible. So it's wild crafted beyond organic or the highest quality organic. And so it takes a lot of time and presence. But what we want to, offer is imagine for a moment, just imagine if you had all that the body needed, all the minerals, all the phytonutrients, all the proteins, every single thing that your body needed to be nourished inside and rebuild itself, rejuvenate itself. And then whatever you chose to eat was just entertainment. You ate it because you got to enjoy it. You eat it because you choose to. Now that's why we've created what we've created. That's really to offer that freedom with food. And to start that process, everything that we've mentioned, you can do just to support yourself. Get this powerful download that's coming right now to this March equinox, because it is a powerful time and a harmony time, like we shared earlier.
I cannot wait. I am really looking forward to that. And thank you so much for the gifts of your wisdom all this time, sharing. I love you both so much. And I know on behalf of the entire Global Peace Tribe, much, much love and appreciation to you both.
Okay, beautiful ones.
Thank you, beloved. And thank you, everyone that's with us.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.